me just to be quiet.
I think we're recording now as well. Joe, do you see that? Okay, cool.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much for taking time on a Sunday night to come and be here with us.
I think we can go ahead and get started if that sounds good. So thank you everyone for coming. My name is Maida, she, her. I am Chief of Staff for Representative Lisa Reynolds, House District 36. Before we get started and talk a little bit about the program, I did want to do a land acknowledgement. We are currently seated on the traditional land of the Yali Tualatin, the Wasco, Cowlitz, Clackamas, and Kalapuya. Indigenous people have played a very large role in shaping the world that we live in today. So I want to make sure that we're acknowledging them before getting started. So today we are going to quickly let the representatives and our guest speaker, Doreen, introduce themselves and talk very briefly about their background and then why they're here. Yeah, so I'm going to pass it over to Representative Reynolds.
Hello, everyone. So great to see you all tonight and those of you out in Facebook land. My name is Lisa Reynolds and I'm the state representative from Oregon House District 36. I have to admit, still very exciting to say that, and I think it always will be. A lot of people who I'm seeing on Facebook helped me get here, and I'm very grateful for that. And a lot of amazing constituents in this crowd and amazing non-constituents. As a lot of you know, I'm a pediatrician, which is really what drove my motivation to run for office, seeing what's working and not working for Oregon families and wanting to make a difference. I also have a deep background in gun violence prevention, cut my activist teeth, as I like to say, with Moms Demand Action. You see a lot of mom shirts in the audience today, and that's always brings me a lot of joy. So thank you so much for being here this evening. We plan to make this an interesting evening and we'll be available for questions. I will now turn it over to my sister legislator and my emerged sister and just my sister from another mister, Representative Dacia Grayber.
I love that. Sister from another mister. My kids are cheering somewhere. My name is Dacia Grayber, and I am the new state representative for House District 35, which is Tigard and Southwest Portland. I am also a brand new representative, following in the footsteps of Rep. Doherty, who I believe is here tonight somewhere. I'm so excited that she came out for this and just indebted for the decade of incredible service that she gave to our district. I come from a background of being a professional firefighter and paramedic for nearly 20 years. And also a mother of four teenagers. So I like to say that I'm good at crisis management. And that comes from both of those things. Like Rep. Reynolds, I also cut my teeth with gun violence prevention activism. And I have been a labor union leader with the Equity and Inclusion Council for the region for our women firefighters for several years. So super excited to be taking my advocacy and activism to the state capitol with Rep. Reynolds and just my incredible team. And let's see, I'm going to pass this over to Dr. Doreen.
Hi, I'm Doreen, and I'm just really honored to be here, adding my voice to Representative Reynolds and Representative Grayber. It's so exciting to say. I am a psychologist in Portland, Oregon, use she, her pronouns, and I'm here just to share a little bit in a little while about the current mental health state regarding how we're doing in the pandemic and give you some tips and tools there.
Thank you. So I would like the representatives, if they could, talk a little bit about their committee assignments and maybe some bill and session highlights over the last 2 weeks. Representative Reynolds.
Great. Well, this comes as no surprise. As a pediatrician, I will be focusing on issues that affect children, especially early childhood. I am on the recently reconstituted Early Childhood Committee, of which I'm vice chair. One of the big topics we're looking at there is improving the child care system, indeed working towards a universal childcare system that's accessible for all, affordable for all, and of excellent quality. So we have our sights set very high for that, and we can do that. I am also on the Behavioral Health Committee. One of the driving factors in me running for office was my concern about the mental health crisis, and that was at the end of 2019, as I viewed ourselves in a mental health crisis that has only been exacerbated by the COVID pandemic. And we are, I thought we were in a crisis 15 months ago, but we are really in a crisis now, and we are seeing the effects of that. And it's been pretty chilling. So things we're working on in that group is some police reform around behavioral health response to nonviolent police calls, as well as shoring up our mental health system in terms of the workforce and making some changes at the Oregon State Hospital. I've also been added to the Water Committee, which has important public health and environmental justice issues, and I'm really excited to be learning about that. And of course, I'll be working on issues around gun violence prevention. That's, as both Dacia and I have talked about, that's one of the reasons that's one of the ways I learned so much about the legislature and how it works, and feeling that I could make a difference there. The three main gun violence prevention issues we are working on this year is requiring that guns are locked when they're not in use, what's known as secure storage, something that moms and I have been working on. I've been working on it for 3 to 4 years. This will be Mom's second year on this, Moms Demand Action second year on this. Closing the Charleston loophole, which is really just a law that will allow law enforcement to truly complete a background check before someone can put their hands on a gun from a gun dealer. I think we're going on 4 years of working on that, and that's long overdue to close that loophole. Lastly, I'm sure you were all as concerned as I was to see the folks outside the state capitol, not to mention what happened at our U.S. Capitol and what happened at the Michigan State Capitol. To have armed people in our places of lawmaking is just not okay. And we are looking to pass a law that would allow public buildings to ban guns from them. That we cannot do that currently, which is problematic. So I think without going into, there's a lot of other stuff, of course, I'm working on and will be working on. I will admit a lot of this is still getting my feet wet, figuring out who does what and who I go to with questions on how we change what. But let me tell you, it's pretty amazing. And I want you all to know that legislators take ideas, we make them into bills, and then we pass laws. So nothing's off the table. And I tell you all that if there are things that you are worried about or care about, please reach out to me, whether you're my constituent or not. We have the potential right now to make Oregon stronger, safer, more equitable than we've ever been. We need to take this current crisis and learn from it and do better. So without further ado, I will pass it back to Rep. Grayber, knowing that we'll have time for questions afterwards. Thank you.
What a wonderful way to finish, Rep. Reynolds. That is so true. And that's really kind of the lens that I'm looking at things through. I have 20 years of public safety and responding to folks in their most vulnerable moments. And it was that advocacy that brought me to the Capitol. And now it's that advocacy that just charges me up, because we are in truly life-saving situation right now. This of course is when my dog, excuse me, 1 second, choose to do this. Sorry about that. That was part of our dinner. I didn't realize. So that's my dog, Sylvie. She's a border collie. She's very smart, and her sense of timing is absolutely uncanny. Hi there. Anyway, as I was saying, so this is a moment in time where we have to respond kind of like emergency responders. We have a full-blown health crisis. We have an economic crisis. We have people who are hurting and frustrated. And I also see part of that as a silver lining of what we have moving forward. So all the inequities that we have faced in our state for years, they are laid bare on the table. And we have this incredibly powerful moment in time to turn those to opportunities. So my avenue for those opportunities, my committees, I'm on 4 committees that I'm very excited about. One is business and labor, where I'm actually vice chair. And I'm kind of thrilled about that. I have a strong labor background. Some folks are like, well, what about the business side? Well, that's why we're balanced on a committee. And I'm just excited to bring that labor perspective to that committee. We have a lot of heavy lifting. We have, I think as of this week, we'll have over 100 bills to be working on. I am also joining the Wildfire Recovery Committee, and that's a new committee this year to deal with what happened and how we take care of people. So it's not a response and mitigation committee so much. I've gotten a lot of emails asking about, logging policy and how we respond as firefighters. That's not the focus of this committee. This committee is how do we take care of the people that were most impacted and how do we rebuild in ways where we avoid this in the future. I have an academic background in emergency management and homeland security, so I was rather thrilled when I was appointed to the Veterans and Emergency Management Committee. So I will be on that, and we have a whole, it's funny because that's usually a pretty sleepy committee that not that many people are very interested in, but this year, a little bit different and super exciting. And then finally, I am on a Ways and Means subcommittee with public safety. So let me see, we're doing pretty good on time. We just want to check our agenda here. Yeah, so going forward as far as bills, if I have a few moments to talk about bills, I have things that touch all these different areas. Of course, I'm super excited to be working with Rep. Reynolds and Senator Burdick on gun violence prevention bills. That's where I learned how to testify and navigate the Capitol, and I'm so excited to continue that work. I have a wonderful bill with Rep. Solman out in Hillsborough that came out of BOLI, so the Bureau of Labor and Industries, on apprenticeships. And that is looking at creating apprenticeship pathways to jobs that would be in firefighting positions and would in kind bolster staffing in areas of the state where we need those jobs the most, where we need those positions. Because in rural areas like Talon and Phoenix, the folks out there responded with their everything, but in some cases there were only 2 people, and that's just not an effective firefighting force, and we need ways to grow that. And apprenticeship programs make things more accessible to non-traditional firefighters, so women and folks from communities of color. So that's exciting. I have a couple of varied things for those of you who are local in Tigard, or anyone who might live on TV Highway, or some of what ODOT refers to as orphan highways. We have a bill, Rep. Pham and I have a bill asking for ODOT to study on how we're going to bring those highways up to good repair, so that we then move those highways to local jurisdiction. So for example, the bill, one of the bills, 2515, if we come to that agreement with ODOT, Hall Boulevard would become the jurisdiction of the city of Tigard. And in a lot of ways that enables Tigard to move forward in ways that are meaningful and inclusive to the community, and not, with folks that aren't as acquainted with the community. I have a couple of housing bills I'm working on with Rep. Ken Helm on anti-discrimination laws. So making sure homeowners associations aren't discriminating on the basis of LGBTQ or BIPOC communities or folks who are multi-generational. A bill that's very near and dear to me that I'm excited about is a cancer presumption bill that takes the cancer presumption in the state of Oregon for firefighters and brings it in line with Washington and California. For folks that don't know me really well, yeah, that's personal because 2 years ago in 2019, my husband was diagnosed with throat cancer. He's survived, he's a survivor, he's back working as a firefighter. It was a very long and arduous journey where we had to fight our workers' compensation program and then learned about how many other cancers aren't covered by this program, including, if you're a woman, the only cancer for a female firefighter that's covered of the female cancers is breast cancer. So just trying to bring that in line. And then I have a bill that Rep. Doherty got going that she started for prophylactic HIV medication. It's called PrEP and PEP, and that is one that we are going to get over the finish line this year. And last but certainly not least, in the House Business and Labor, we have a bill addressing COVID presumptions for workers, for frontline workers, if we can't fix that in the Senate. So I'm ready to go to the mat on that one as well. And I will stop here and pass it on in the interest of time, but thank you. Thanks everyone for being here tonight.
Thank you, representatives. Really appreciated hearing that introduction to what you all are doing and have been doing the last 2 weeks. Now I'd like to pass it on to Doreen. She has kind of been a fixture in Representative Reynolds' former town hall, so we're happy to have her here again. Doreen, would you like to go ahead and lead us through a little bit of what you do?
Thank you so much. I just want to be a voice that is recognizing the reality that we're all probably pretty exhausted, right? And we in Oregon at this time of year are already at high risk for depression. We are at high risk. We're at one of the highest risks in the nation in the winter months for suicide, both attempts and death by suicide. And so given that we are now kind of in this post-election time where we don't have other things that are really distracting us and keeping us very focused and busy, we are seeing an uptick in both depression and suicidal ideation, also seeing an uptick in anxiety in our state. Definitely seeing almost double the number of calls to our county mental health crisis line that we would normally see, which is significant because we know that it takes a lot of energy to make a call to a county crisis line. So that means we're missing a lot of folks who are really, really hurting. So I want to encourage all of you, and I was really grateful for the invitation, to just maybe take a couple of steps with your neighbors and also yourselves to make sure that we are all tending to what we need to tend to make sure that we get through this part of the pandemic. Most of us have a real diminished level of stamina right now. And most of our, maybe even our neighbors may have more of a diminished sense of stamina. It's becoming harder and harder to distance, to remember your mask, to remember to stay outside and not gather, especially as we face these dark and cold and dreary, rainy winter months. So I want to encourage you to take actually a couple really intentional actions. The first one is to check in on folks, to check in as you can on your neighbors. You can even leave a little sidewalk chalk note if it isn't raining that says, you know, how are you doing? I hope you're okay. Or, you know, if you have a phone number or a number you can text, to just touch base and see how folks are doing. To also really encourage people to add into their equations in terms of what they're going and not going to do in this time of still needing to be very safe, adding people's mental health into that equation. So if someone is experiencing actual symptoms of depression or anxiety, maybe sleeping more than they normally would, or not being able to find any pleasure in activities, these are all also things that we're all experiencing right now as a result of the pandemic. Maybe eating too much or not eating enough, experiencing a lot of guilt. This is a really, really unique thing that's happened at this point in the pandemic. People are starting to, again, as they don't have as much election work or as much, you know, directly holding their attention around civic current events, they're starting to feel guilty for doing things like taking a break or guilty for not taking on a big project right now. And that is something that can really push folks over kind of that mental health edge. So we want to make sure that we're considering, are there ways that we could safely connect up with somebody in an embodied way, you know, with a mask at a distance, outside taking a walk, or meeting in a covered area, again, outside at a distance with masks, to just make sure that we are keeping ourselves kind of in tune and relationally connected. I want to encourage you to, as much as you can, get active, and maybe to invite others to do the same, you know, to say, hey, I'm going to go for a walk at this time. How about if we talk on the phone while you walk in your neighborhood and I'll walk in my neighborhood? Or I'm going to do this yoga online, would like to join me? But anything that you can do to inspire people to kind of be active and physical in their bodies. Another thing I want to encourage everyone to do is to encourage yourself to take some breaks from multitasking and to ask those in your community to do the same. Multitasking, especially digital multitasking, takes a huge it has a huge cost on us, both in terms of our emotional regulation and in terms of our physical health. So maybe inviting folks to an hour this week where they do only one thing at a time. Literally, this can have a profound impact on our mental health. That means that if you're doing the dishes, you're just doing the dishes. Or if you are responding to email, you're just responding to email. You're not listening to a podcast at the same time. If you're watching a movie, you're just watching a movie. You're not catching up on your texts or emails. But this one thing is shown by 3 different sets of research to have a profound impact on our ability to kind of tend to self-care and to soothe and become less kind of distracted and overwhelmed, which I think most of us are right now. I'm going to put some resources in the chat. I am going to put the county or the state crisis line in. However, we are a little bit overwhelmed in that space. So I'm going to put in a couple of other hotlines that you can share with people. And I want to also leave you with one tool tonight that you can use and share. Again, we're all in a little bit, there's a lot of kind of chatter right now around how everybody's kind of realizing how traumatized they are after the last 4 years. And it's easy when we feel that to feel like we want to just join every committee and stay as involved as we've been and stay as busy as we've been. However, there is a real cost to that. So in your realizing how traumatized you've been in the last 4 months, if you can do this one action before you say yes to anything new and just get yourself grounded and get yourself quiet, it will be hugely helpful. So I'm just going to teach you tonight square breathing, which is the super simple thing that you can take with you tonight, and maybe you share it with a couple people in your community as a way of when you start to feel overwhelmed, or even when you start to feel relieved and find yourself getting overly committed too quickly, to just stop and take a square breath. And all it is imagining a square. So I've got a little square coaster here. And you're just going to breathe around the square, inhaling for the count of 4, holding for the count of 4, exhaling for the count of 4, and then holding for the count of 4. And the other thing we want to do with that is when we inhale, we want to inhale through the nose. So we're going to smell the roses. And then we're going to exhale through the mouth, blow out the candles. And these are the most important kinds of breath for our mental health. So here we go. Ready? So inhaling through the nose for the count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Holding 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale 1, 2, 3, 4, and hold 2, 3, 4. Just that quick thing, even if you put a square sticky note on your computer and remind yourself to do that several times a day in the next couple of months, we will all get through this part of the pandemic a little more healthfully. Thank you. I will put a bunch of resources in the chat and I will hand it back to our esteemed representatives.
Thank you, Doreen. You can see why I invite her to these things. So where is this, Maida, is this time now for some question and answer?
Yeah, I think we can go ahead and get started. We had 3 questions beforehand, which I'm going to pass it off to Devin, who is a staffer for Representative Grayber.
Thank you so much. Also, if you guys have questions, feel free to put them into the chat if you feel comfortable. You can also send them directly to me using the private message feature if you want to send a private message that way. And also use the raise hand feature if you would like to ask your question yourself, and we'll call y'all in or as we see fit and as we see it come up. So the first question that was sent ahead of time was, once seniors are eligible to receive the vaccine, how do we register for the vaccine? How do we make an appointment? And if multiple places are giving the vaccine, should we focus on a specific place?
I'll take that if that's okay, Dacia. I was sharing a little bit before we went live that I've spent a lot of time this weekend in what I would call the rabbit hole of trying to schedule a vaccine appointment. Not for myself, as being a healthcare provider, I'm wired and in the system, and it's been pretty seamless. I'm getting my 2nd dose on Wednesday, but I have constituents and friends who are in the 1A category, but are not healthcare providers and aren't living in congregate living, and it's rough and it's ugly and it's terrible. It's a terrible system right now. And I'm going to be really honest. I went through the whole OHA questionnaire. It deemed that I was, I pretended I was my friend who's clearly in 1A, but isn't a healthcare provider. And it directs you to the county site, which directs you back to the OHA site. So, but what I will say is that I reached out to some other folks, other representatives working on this, and we do have a few phone numbers for you. One for the OHSU website. I'm sorry, the OHSU system, which is vaccinating people in their cars in the red parking lot at the airport. I'm sure the airport parking lot's pretty empty right now. And the other for the convention center site. Now, I will say again, my friend who's been trying to get a vaccine for herself for the past 2 weeks has not been successful scheduling an appointment using those two phone numbers, although she said the people are very nice, which is good. And I'm really, really sorry to say that right now there is not a system in place for people to schedule COVID vaccines if you're not a healthcare provider. We will keep working on this. There's a hearing tomorrow from the COVID subcommittee talking to folks about the vaccine rollout. I am talking to the chair of that committee tonight, Maxine Dexter, about what I experienced this weekend. And believe me, I will be a resource on this. I will not rest until this works for people. There we have it. Do you have anything else to add? I don't see Dacia now. She must be on a different screen. Oh, there you are.
No, this is for sure your wheelhouse, Rep. Reynolds, and I would defer to that. We have also in our office been getting lots of constituent questions and just referring folks to the rollout. I'll defer to you for sure. Thank you.
And I will say, in reading the Oregonian, I think on Friday, Oregon is on schedule or on pace to receive 100,000 vaccines a week for the next several weeks. I saw that Terry wrote there. Obviously, there's a real issue with the federal, and we all will. We should say the bar here was completely. I'm not using the right metaphor. The federal government really dropped the ball on this. But we are picking up the pieces. We are building our infrastructure in Oregon. The vaccines from the federal government that were promised didn't come in the last few weeks, but it looks like we're back on schedule to be getting about 100,000 vaccines a week, which would be awesome. And so I'm feeling hopeful, but I will tell you the mechanism for how people figure out how to get vaccinated, it's inexplicable. It's impossible to figure out. So we will keep working on this, and I want to be a direct resource. I'm not, in fact, I will tell you, I deliberately did not put links to OHA COVID site on my newsletter because it's not very helpful right now.
All right, I'll move to the next question. So the question is, KGW reported that teachers are concerned that when they go back to the classroom, when they are back in the classroom, if they have students who are suicidal, what do? The teacher interviewed said she had no training in mental health and sounded very concerned about the new assignments being given to the teachers. Are teachers given training or instruction on how to help students?
I'm again going to defer. Sorry to put this on you, Rep. Reynolds, but this is again, as a pediatrician and someone on interfacing with these committees, if you don't mind, I think you'd be the more appropriate person to tackle this.
Yeah, and Doreen certainly chime in. I think you're right. Teachers are not yet trained on suicide prevention or in managing young people who are feeling suicidal. There was a measure called Addie's Act passed, I believe, 2 years ago. That requires there to be a curriculum developed and implemented for all teachers to know what to do when someone's feeling suicidal. That said, I do think I continue to be amazed at teachers' just innate sense of what is the right thing to say, who are the right people I should direct the student to. And they definitely need the advanced training, but I've been pretty impressed that when, and I've dealt with people who are suicidal, I don't want to minimize it, but it doesn't take much to put them a little bit at ease and give them some attention and then figure out what we need to do to get them in a better spot. I think the bigger question is then the mental health system to provide that better spot. That's still challenging. So I hope I answered that okay. Doreen, do you have a few words to add on that?
I just put in the chat the Oregon Youth line, and I
Yeah.
would encourage everyone on this call to write down, to copy that, and make sure that teachers in your district have that resource, because that resource is now doubly staffed as we make the transition back to school.
Thank you, Doreen. And I will say after our town hall, we will compile all the resources that we're putting in the chat and share them on social media.
All right, so the next question that was sent ahead of time was, with some reports showing women accounted for all of the recent COVID job loss, do you have specific policy goals that target childcare or ways to bridge that divide?
Could someone please ask about wildfires? No, I'm teasing. I'm teasing. No, thank you for that. You're right. The jobs lost in, I think it was it for the month of December? You know, all the jobs that were lost were, almost all the jobs that were lost were among women. And we know that that is in part that they were childcare workers who lost jobs, or they're women who had to leave their jobs because of inadequate childcare. So childcare is absolutely at the core of that. So thank you so much for that question. And as stated earlier, we are working on doing just that, revamping the childcare system to make it accessible, affordable, so we can allow women who are in that job actually make a living wage, and then women have access to appropriate childcare for their kids so they can continue their careers. And we know that COVID has dealt a particular blow to women needing to stay home to help with distance learning, and because childcares have closed.
Okay, so the last question that was sent ahead of time was, colleges in Oregon don't currently collect info on how many students are parents. Would you support legislation that would seek to find out how many college students push a stroller? SB 564 would seek to do this.
I can jump on that one. That's honestly the first I've heard of that. And I'm interested in the genesis of the question and what the goal is with that data. I don't know if whoever asked it is on here tonight, but I'd love to hear a little bit more. Anyone, Bueller? But no, I'm always in support of having good data to do things, but data for this, towards a goal. So I would like to hear more about it.
Yeah, well said, Dacia. Thank you.
All right, I'll move to our first sent in question through the Zoom chat, which is from Judith. And the question was, do you feel safe in the Capitol with some of your colleagues who have objected to wearing masks and who have encouraged armed protesters?
Just a little light question. Personally, and I think everyone, what we're creating right now, what those representatives and that senator has created, is a culture of fear and of intimidation. And I don't think anyone can feel reasonably safe in that environment. So we do have rules in place now that are very strict in the House. People have to be wearing masks. They have to be masked in public spaces. You can be without a mask in your own office with no one else in it. And then if those individuals are not masked, they have been asked to leave. I can say, and I want to acknowledge my place of privilege coming into this conversation. I'm also a healthcare worker. I've received my first vaccine. I will get another one in early February. And that is a place of privilege when I talk about that sense of safety, as well as the level of law enforcement that has increased at the Capitol. I'm a white woman. I look at these officers oftentimes as there to protect me. And I know not everybody feels that way. That said, we are very well protected right now at the Capitol. We've had National Guard there, we've had extra officers, and frankly, there were a lot of paper tigers on the internet, and that's not to say that something won't come about, but a lot of what we were hearing about didn't materialize at the state capitol after the 6th. And I think that's because there was a very strong and clear message sending that is not acceptable. I will say that I am looking towards building bridges with some of my Republican colleagues and hoping that they will step up and say that this kind of language, that inciting violence, that stating that, you know, election results were invalid, and pushing conspiracy theories is not helpful to bipartisanship. It's not helpful to moving forward, and it leaves everybody feeling unsafe. So I am looking forward to those folks standing up and calling out their colleagues as well. And Lisa, if I may, for just a second, I can kind of answer one of those other questions. Someone asked about what was being done with Rep. Neerman. Rep. Neerman was formally censured on the House floor. Almost all of us have, on the Democratic Party in the House, have called for his resignation. The reason that he was not, that was not sent to a vote on the floor is, with the way the rules work, if we were to vote to expel him and did not have the majority that we needed with everyone, and I believe, I think we needed 40 votes to do that, then that negates any opportunity to do that in the future. So the plan is that the full state investigation will go through, and once those facts are out there, then maybe some of our colleagues who are on the fence will see more clearly what the appropriate course of action is. Thank you.
Well said. Thank you. Nothing to add.
I think we'll go to a raised hand. And the way my interface is set up, I only see the first name. So the first name is Emily, but I believe it's the only Emily with their hand up.
Hello, thank you for all of the important things you're all working on. I have two questions. One is, how much do you see the climate crisis affecting the mental health of young people? Since it is a crisis that ties everything into so many aspects of health, wildfires, the pandemic now and possible future ones, and of course, everyone's hope for the future and a livable planet. And the impacts all falling most heavily on the lowest income and most disenfranchised groups. So one is that mental health question, but in that context, how likely, do you have any sense of how likely it might be that the climate bills might make it to a vote during this session? Or is it just too early to tell? Thank you.
I'm happy to take a first pass or first crack at that. Yes, of course, I do think the young people who are seeing the clock ticking on the lifespan of our planet, I do think that they are experiencing some mental health issues around that. It's not as much what I'm hearing these days. I heard a lot about it pre-COVID. Now I think a lot of young people, at least in my practice, are more concerned with the immediate crisis, but of course we need to do something about that. And I have to admit, I'll show my ignorance and still getting my feet wet and all that. I don't know what I know there's certainly a lot of appetite among my colleagues to pass climate crisis legislation to mitigate the crisis and to slow down, the death of our planet. But I'm not exactly sure where things are on the pecking order. So I don't know, Dacia, if you have something to add to that.
Yeah, I can add a little bit. I know there are some folks, one of our new freshman legislator sisters, Representative Con Pham, is doing outstanding work. That a Green New Deal is one of her focus goals, and she is on the committee to do that, along with Rep. Karin Power, who's been a champion for that. And I'm looking forward to being a climate champion and supporting them. I'm not in those committees, unfortunately, but the bills that do come through where I am, I will be looking to support. I think it's really important as we look to not just the needs of the metro area, but the entire state. We need to do a better job in how we talk about climate policy, to where people who have traditionally felt marginalized by that conversation or uncomfortable with it see a path forward for how this is good for everyone. And I know Rep. Pham and I've had incredible talks about creating renewable jobs, clean jobs, green energy jobs, and seeing that, because there's this fallacy that when we create that the Green New Deal somehow means the shutdown of life as we know it and a loss of jobs. And that's not it at all. It's an opportunity to create economic security and jobs that put us into the future. And it's a very holistic approach. So I'm excited to approach it from where I sit.
Yeah, and I'll add one more thing. Thank you, Dacia. You gave me some ideas. I think you're absolutely right. The messaging has been, I think, a little lackluster in the past for those of us in favor of climate change legislation. And I think there's this attitude that climate change legislation is going to build jobs in Portland and not elsewhere. And that's nothing could be further from the truth. And those of you who know me, I mean, I've really thought about some of these Green New Deal type jobs as part of our recovery from COVID, because we know that a lot of the jobs we've lost in the pandemic will not be coming back. And that's, yeah, so thank you. Win-win.
All right, for our next question, I'm going to combine a few of them to do more of a broad stroke when it comes to vaccine rollouts. So we have examples like, for example, Washington, where Starbucks helped make their process more efficient. Is our state currently looking for private partnerships or any additional steps that we can do to improve our process?
From what I understand, no, but again, it's sometimes there's these things going on that I am not privy to, or that, you know, Rep. Grayber's not privy to, or even Rep. Dexter, who's heading up the COVID subcommittee. But I totally hear you. I have to admit, I was in the car with my family talking about my frustration around vaccine delivery, and we were kind of like, you know, love or hate Amazon, right? But you know, if Amazon were like, you know, wired to go to help us make sure we get the vaccines where we need to go, I think it's something we absolutely need to consider. So Starbucks and Amazon, Walmart's helping in Washington State. I know Amazon, I know the Biden administration has spoken to Amazon, but I absolutely think we shouldn't be reinventing a wheel that private industry has already invented quite well and willing to do a partnership with us. We need to not have the hubris of we know how to do it best here. We as the state leaders in Oregon. I mean, this is these logistics have been worked out on so many different levels by folks who do this day in, day out. So thanks for the question. I think we have to reach out to everyone for help right now.
Yeah, and here I come to be Debbie Downer a little bit. I agree with that. I also feel very strongly Amazon, Starbucks are corporations that sometimes have taken advantage historically of their workers. So I have a lot of red flags. I agree that we need to have public-private partnerships, but they need to be in ways that are equitable, so folks are not being put at risk. Like our Amazon workers are already at risk. They're already a higher diagnosis of, they have a higher rate of COVID diagnosis. There have been warehouses in the Northwest that have been shut down. So I think with strict protections around that, I'm in support of that. I also think we still need to look at structures that exist within the state that are being used very successfully with fire agencies and EMS, like Terry Mills talked about, where we use conflagration style responses. Those have those protections in place. Those are people who are trained and used to that, and we roll them out to do these. So I think combining that with a public-private partnership that's I was going to say well-regulated, but properly regulated, so there's support, but we need to have those conversations and have them fast. So thank you.
Great point, Dacia. Thank you.
I'm going to jump up to a question that I missed, and then I'm going to take a hand-risen question. So I apologize for missing this one. What is the legislature's plan for dealing with the massive budget deficit?
Oh, that was an easy question. No, I don't know. I have to say that I think that we have a better economic outlook in the first quarter than we thought we were going to have. I think that could radically, I think we're on a precipice right now where if we get this vaccination thing, if we get COVID under control and we can start reopening confidently, we're going to take that plateau and see things get better. If we don't, if we have people that are forced into houselessness and we continue to have COVID deaths and all the compounding issues, then I think we're in a lot of trouble. But that's such a complex question. I'm not sure if the person who asked that is on here, but I don't think that's easily answerable in the short window of time that we have, but it's in the back of my mind in everything that we do.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I do think the economic outlook has not been as dire as we had feared, which is, is a little bit of a sign that since we are a state that depends so highly on personal income tax for revenue, it's a sign that a lot of people in the upper strata of income have actually done okay in COVID. And we know that it has, that COVID has completely made much more difficult the lives of those in the lower socioeconomic status. And that's what we really need to do. And I know it's trite to say yet again that the budget is a moral document, but we absolutely need to be strengthening, even building from scratch safety nets to help those who are most vulnerable, both due to issues around racial inequities as well as socioeconomic status, and those on the who have been working in the jobs that have disappeared and won't be coming back soon. So I, again, kind of as Dacia and I said at the beginning, I think the budget actually provides an opportunity to really put our values where they really, really count, so that we are, building in Oregon and taking care of each other and doing it better and more equitable than before. And I know that's all a little bit, politician sounding, but I do really believe that's what we're all working toward.
All right, so we will take a raised hand question, and I have Heidi Johnstone.
Hi, and thank you. This is kind of like a question, but I want to make a statement and open up a very important issue. First, I want to say thank you to State Representative Dacia Grayber for inviting me, and State Representative Lisa Reynolds and Dr. Doreen Dodgen-McGee for making this meeting happen. I'm making the statement to make you aware of an issue. I have been a resident of Woodspring Apartments since 2019, and I'm going to read this from a statement that I've comprised. I was priced out of my previous resident, looked everywhere for affordable, accessible apartments, but the prices were out of reach. I thought I had found a place and could stay here and afford for years to come. I thought it was safe until I learned that Section 42 contract at our building was expiring. And then we got a notice on our doors on December 31st, informing us that Woodspring Apartments would be converting to market rate. This was a shock, and some knew this was coming, but hoped the owners of Mission Rock Residential LLC would renew the contract and all would be well. It is not. I'm aware of the effort that the city of Tigard has made to purchase Woodspring and keep it low income, but the owners of Woodspring will not sell. We are now in a 3-year grace period, and the owner is allowed to raise the rent as much as 9.3% plus CPI each year. Correct me if I'm wrong. And I'm aware how this may be different each year. 3 years pass quickly for seniors like me, and the clock is ticking, causing stress, fear, and uncertainty. Many residents here will wait. Others will leave in fear, and others will continue their residency and will be priced out of their income if their income remains the same in the low income levels. We are people that have been residents for decades, have health and disability that limits our abilities to move, that require help, and that have acquired, and that their belongings, everything that they've ever known and loved, will have to be moved to another residence of uncertain location. There is nowhere to go. There are massive waiting lists. Section 8 waiting lists myself have been on there for 10 years. This is very stressful. And as we know, stress plays a toxic part in the health and well-being of seniors. I can only speak for myself. And since I received notice on December 31st, 2020, my health has been adversely affected. Housing is the greatest challenge that seniors, and especially seniors with disabilities, face. Especially this is accelerated since the mortgage crisis of 2007, 2008. Housing is the greatest challenge, and we implore you to help, to look at creative solutions, create new housing opportunities in the Tigard area for 55 plus low-income seniors like myself. I ask that in a legislative capacity, if rent control can be addressed, and this would serve to slow down rent increases for low-income fixed seniors on fixed incomes and help people stay housed longer. There's also a question of creating new housing in Tigard with available bond money, a percentage of low-income senior housing being included, or creating a percentage of low-income housing senior apartments in new communities like River Terrace or other communities that may be being developed in Tigard would truly make Tigard more diverse, equitable, and an inclusive community, especially for those hit hardest after COVID-19. Seniors have seen so much bad press, so to speak. We've been the most vulnerable, and many seniors have lost their lives in this crisis, along with other poor souls out there that COVID has just devastated. We're asking for your help, your support, and I know that, and that we can only hope that there can be a solution to this, so that people can get housing that they can actually afford and stay in the communities that they have connections with, families with, friends with, and want to stay a part of, rather than being moved around, and not knowing where they're going to go. It's very difficult, and I can tell you from my experience, it's so hard to worry about what's going to happen from one year to the next. It's very hard on yourself, and very hard on, like you were saying, with stress. It affects seniors so terribly. And so I'm asking for your help, assistance, and awareness in this, so that we can overcome this crisis, overcome this issue, and find. Now, our apartment here is very interesting. It's 172 units. So you're going to see approximately over 200 tenants being affected. So this is massive. This is the biggest complex, and the only other low-income 55+ complex in Tigard is the Knolls, and that's a very small building. And there's just no low-income housing to be had, and the wait lists are years long. So I ask you for your help, and I thank you for your time and your ear in this matter, and hope that something can be resolved.
Heidi, thanks again so much for reaching out on this issue. I really enjoyed talking to you about this the other day, and we're going to keep pushing on this. Our office is aware of this. I've been in touch. Our office has been in touch with, I think Council President Lube is on here, Mayor Snyder. This is an issue that is pressing, and as someone else mentioned in the chat, it's not isolated to Tigard. The same company also owns a building in Tualatin, where the same thing is going to be happening. So there are conversations about affordable housing development happening in Tigard right now, and I think the issue of our seniors is front and center with this, especially 200 folks. I said this to you on the phone, and I'm happy to say it here. I am not going to watch 200 senior citizens in Tigard be pushed into homelessness because we couldn't figure out a solution. So 3 years is not a lot of time, you're right, but it is time, and we're going to do something, and we're going to make it happen. In the meantime, we're going to continue to connect you with the Oregon Law Center. I don't think we have anyone from Unite Oregon on the call tonight, but we're going to work with Unite on resources to make sure that as seniors in this situation, you have a path to advocacy for this, and that we can take this a step further. In addition, I was taking down some notes. I'm going to speak with our chair on the housing committee and just investigate. There are right now over 1,800 bills that were introduced for this session. I don't know if something like this is in one of those bills, but if it's not, we really need to figure out how we can move this forward. And I'm excited about the partnerships in Tigard. I will say Tigard has been a wonderful city just to get to know as we work forward with this. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hattie, for sharing your story, and we will look at this for sure.
All right, so I'm going to take a broad stroke on this one, but before I do that, I would like to ask both maybe Justin and Joseph, if you can put our office's emails in the chat for those that we don't get to. If you can reach out and make sure if your question wasn't answered, we'd love to, if you don't know who represents you, we can figure that out for you. So please reach out that way. We're also going to try to capture all the questions that didn't get to here and get back to who we can. But there are a ton of questions we haven't got to, and I don't think we'll have time to, so I just wanted to flag that for folks. And again, I'm going to broad stroke with this one. We have a lot going on when it comes to vaccines, particularly when we're talking about our teachers and reopening our schools. We were curious on your take on the pacing and how we're currently handling that, and if you have any plans you would like to see taken into effect in the future.
This is a difficult situation because of the the number of people we want to vaccinate and the number of vaccines we have. The governor has chosen to prioritize school teachers, and this is, as I said, her nod to her, the importance of reopening schools. I have to, I just personally have to say, I've been one of those people who's been pushing to reopen schools, and I have to say I'm taking a little bit more of a nuanced view to it right now. It's very complicated, right? I was seeing in my exam room, kids who are really, really struggling, kids who are becoming disengaged. As my kids hear me say, my sons who are in college, doing college remotely. I'm most concerned right now about the middle schoolers. They are, a lot of them are taking care of younger kids at home and just very disengaged, very rarely putting on the camera. Had a couple pretty amazing high school kids who have kind of stopped going to school, one of whom was, his real motivation was the football team, and obviously that went away. So I'm just very, very concerned about that. And so I will say, earlier, I think in the fall, I was growing very concerned about the fact that there didn't seem to be a plan to reopen schools. And now that that plan's coming to fruition, I am concerned. However, we have seen in other states that when the control measures are in place, when we can do strict masking, when we can use plexiglass, when we can make the classroom sizes smaller, the risks are lower in terms of spreading COVID, but the risks are not zero. And I think every family is going to have to be able to make that decision. If there's a family where grandma lives with them, that child, it's probably less safe for that child to return to school. So these are very complicated issues. We could probably talk a whole hour about that. I also truly understand, I'm hearing from a lot of constituents, the concern over vaccinating teachers in front of the elderly, in front of the way that Governor Brown has laid it out is teachers starting tomorrow. And then on February something, 3rd, 8th, I think it's 10 days later, we'll start with people who are 80 and older. A week after that, it goes 75, 70, 65. I completely understand why that's problematic. And I think I'm not certain I really agree with that decision, because we know that deaths from COVID are way disproportionately among people who are older than 65 and certainly older than 75 and certainly older than 80. And it's a difficult choice that the governor made. I wouldn't be surprised if it changes up a little bit as more and more people express their concern. And when we really look at vaccine and life-saving, it really is those who are in the older age groups. So I'm not sure I quite answered that question. I will just say it is a really rough question. I'm super worried about kids who are falling behind academically and suffering from mental illness issues. Did you guys read Las Vegas decided somewhat abruptly to reopen their schools because the number of youth suicides in Las Vegas has been 18 in 3 months, and that's more than they had in all of the previous school year. So it's a very difficult situation. I think absolutely what we have to do, though, is if it ends up being we don't resume school till the fall of this year, and that's definitely possible for some districts and for some students, we absolutely have to have a program in place so that those kids aren't behind or those kids aren't struggling academic and emotionally. That's where I think the work really has to happen. So on that note, I will stop.
Just a couple of things to add to that. Just as a point of information, there are special programs where schools are open. Tigard Tualatin has been providing services for kids with specialized, I'm going to say this wrong, IEPs for a while now. So some of our most vulnerable students are having their needs being met by teachers that have voluntarily come to that. I do feel very strongly, and Rep. Reynolds and I have talked about this, I am disturbed as a first responder who saw a lot of COVID cases. The sickest COVID cases and the people dying were all seniors. I have an ethical dilemma. I'm a mother, I have one child who is suffering terribly in this. That child does not do well with this. I have another one who is thriving in ways that he never had before. He's a straight A student all of a sudden. So we're looking at, how do we plan in the future? How does this transform how we school our kids? But two things, we've got to get to a point, I think, with enough people pushing where the governor is vaccinating seniors sooner, And before we ask teachers to be back in classrooms, we need to make sure that the teachers are fully vaccinated, that it is an optional thing, that they are not being forced back into the classrooms, and that older people, maybe in those families most affected, can be vaccinated instead, or in addition, sorry. Yeah, it's a complex issue, but thank you, Rep Reynolds, for your thoughts on that. And thank you for graciously saying, you know, it's a hard thing. I can speak to this as a legislator, to come out and say, this is how I believe this is going to go. And then as we get more information, to evolve how we approach something. So I really appreciate that.
I know we've run out of time, but I have one more question that a lot of people ask. If both representatives don't mind taking it, perfect. So I'm going to combine a few of them. Again, I apologize for individuals who sent in specific questions, but we have a few questions about the Reimagine Oregon project, and your thoughts on that, as well as what we're doing to support BIPOC folks throughout Oregon moving forward.
Do you want to start with that, Dacia? I mean,
I'm trying, so the Reimagine Oregon project, could you refresh someone? This is familiar, but I'm drinking from a fire hose right now, so I want to make sure that we're talking about the same thing.
I do. Wait, I just have to say, Dacia once said, I know what a fire hose is like. This is worse. Trying to learn, but I have to admit, I don't know the details of Reimagine Oregon either, except I know it was something that a coalition that was put together in the wake of the George Floyd murder and the racial unrest downtown. And I will say, just in terms of supporting issues around communities of color, I will be, I'm super impressed and pleased to be part of the 81st legislature, which is the most diverse legislature in the history of Oregon, although we still have a long way to go. And I will be supporting the caucus, which is the Black Indigenous People of Color Caucus, the BIPOC caucus, in they actually set out an agenda of what they'd like to accomplish in this legislative session, and I'm wholeheartedly behind them.
I would just agree to that. Same. I don't have someone's texted the website, but I don't have the individual platform in front of me right now. I have been fully in support of our BIPOC colleagues and the platform that they came up with ahead of time. I think as white blue collar worker, it is not my place to dictate what the Black, Indigenous, person of color, people of color community decides to do, but it is my place to support them and to amplify that message. So I am excited to do that. If there are any other pressing questions, Devin, I do have a few more minutes I can spend. I don't want to cut things off abruptly.
Same here.
I think with that, we got most of the common themes. I would ask that if you have a specific question that we didn't get to, both Joseph and Justin have linked our emails, please reach out. Sorry, go ahead, Dacia.
Oh, I just wanted to take a moment of privilege here for a second. All the work that the reps do, none of this could happen without the incredible staffers that we have supporting us. And I just want to shout out, I'll shout out mine first and then pass it to Rep Reynolds. But I've got Justin Lowe here tonight and Devin Norden, and then also Kavi Shrita, who's going to be interning with us. And really, an office is only as good, the work we get done is only as good as our staffers and interns. So just mad props to them for being the oil in the engine and the spark. And I'm not a mechanic, so I'm just going to stop there.
I know. I'm like, what other analogy? Yes, excellent. And we didn't introduce our staff at the beginning because a lot of you will be interacting with them. And I'm just, yeah, it's incredible to have staff like Maida Pula, who for my screen is right here, and then Joe, who's over there. It's like Hollywood Squares. Really grateful for their support and getting to know them as people. It's interesting. I have never met Joe in real life. I met Maida in real life once, but we are knitting together, I think, a really formidable team and getting to know each other pretty well and kind of even getting each other's jokes a bit. So really grateful to have them. And then Erie Page is here. She's a high school student who's an intern in our office as well. So thank you all so much. I'm really grateful for your time this evening. I know I can speak for Dacia. We are 100% accessible. Like, reach out to us, email. We're happy to meet with you. Obviously, it's remote right now. I think the entire session is going to be remote. Someone talked a little bit about in-person testimony. I don't anticipate us being at a point before the end of June where we can have in-person testimony. But I think the good news is we can have remote testimony. You don't have to take a whole day off school and come down, a whole day off work and come down to Salem. Although one of my biggest regrets is not having Moms Demand Action Lobby Day up on, in person, but I'm sure you guys are figuring out some remote version of that. So thank you all so much. Thanks to our staff. Thanks to my constituents. Thanks to so many friends and family on this call. I'm incredibly grateful. And happy birthday, Judy, tomorrow.
Happy birthday. Yeah, just to close out, same. Thank you all so much for being here. It's a Sunday night and everything's remote. These are difficult times. And we look forward, our office, I don't know how many that we'll get to do together, Rep Reynolds, but we are intending to have some kind of listening session, whether that's a coffee conversation in the morning or a town hall, at least every 2 weeks. And like Rep Reynolds said, especially right now, while we're so isolated, being connected is incredibly important to me. And I think there's people on this call that can attest. If you write to me, I will get back to you. We are going to work to help make things better for everyone. So thanks again for being here.
And thanks, Doreen, too, for being here as well. Yes, thank you all. Thank you.
But
Well, he's gone.
yeah,
No, it's this guy. He's got
sorry,
this.
yes.
Yes.
Hi, Dick and Kristen. I haven't seen you since the inauguration. How much did you guys cry?
You know, there were several crying moments during Inauguration Day. The last was late at night when we watched the fireworks in DC. That was amazing. Come from DC, seeing that was a wonderful thing. So it was a good day. The crying was all good crying.
Right, it was that like relief and joy. And although I kept saying, Joe, get off that balcony. I was so worried about him on that balcony watching the fireworks.
And yet, what a great place to watch from.
Yes.
Yeah, that is a wonderful dog. Dacia, I love your dog.
Very, very naughty dog who liberated my family of their dinner tonight of a nice pork roast that we made. So
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
on the counter and helped herself. Apparently she wasn't fed. So she was feeling neglected and she let me know.
She got all the attention.
Unbelievable.
I guess you're opening a can of soup for dinner.
I have a backup plan. It's going to be disturbing to my family, but I've been trying to make more vegetarian meals anyway. So,
right, this is your dog trying to keep you honest. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what's happening here tonight. Anyway,
Great.
thanks so much, you guys.
Thanks,
Great.
Kristen. Bye, Dick. Bye.
Thank you.
Nice to see you. Thanks so much for coming. Yeah.
thank you.
Thanks. They were my button makers. They made all my buttons. But anyway, good friends. Yeah, how did you guys feel?
Good. I don't know. Is Bill with a staffer here? Bill, are you there?
Oh, is there still someone here?
Oh, not anymore. Bye, Bill.
We're also still recording if you guys wanted to stop that.
Okay.
Yeah, we can stop recording.
And are we still on Facebook Live? Do you
No.
know? No. Okay.
Everyone